The morning sun of Kepler 442b cast long shadows across the settlement of New Seoul, as Ji-won Kim walked through the botanical gardens she had spent 3 years building. The alien world's double sunrise painted the sky in shades of purple and gold that still amazed her after all this time. She knelt beside a row of modified Earth tomatoes, checking their growth against the measurements on her datapad. "These are growing faster than I expected," she said to herself, recording the numbers. The plants were not just surviving in the alien soil, but thriving. Her latest nutrient blend was working better than she had hoped. Ji-won was 28 years old and had come to this frontier world to help make it suitable for human life. She was a botanist, someone who studied plants and how to make them grow. The colony needed food crops that could handle the different soil and strange sunlight of this new world. Every successful plant she grew meant more food for the growing human population. The settlement of New Seoul was built in a valley between two mountain ranges. About 15,000 humans lived here, along with several hundred aliens from different species. The town center had shops, offices, and meeting halls where humans and aliens conducted business together. It was not always peaceful, but it was better than the wars that had happened on other worlds. Ji-won heard footsteps behind her and turned to see her husband, Hyun-woo Park, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. He was 30 years old, taller than her by a head, with strong hands that showed the calluses of someone who worked with tools and machinery. His smile made her feel warm despite the cool morning air. "You left bed early again," Hyun-woo said, handing her a cup. "The plants will still be here after breakfast." Ji-won accepted the coffee gratefully. "I wanted to check the growth rates while the soil temperature was still cool." "Look at these numbers, Hyun-woo. The new nutrient blend is working even better than our tests showed." Hyun-woo looked at her datapad, though he understood little about plant biology. He had been a military engineer on Earth before coming to the colony. Now he worked on building projects, making sure the settlement had proper water systems, power grids, and communication networks. His job was to keep the infrastructure running so people like Ji-won could do their specialized work. "This is important, is it not?" Hyun-woo said, looking at the healthy plants. "Very important," Ji-won replied. "If we can make these crops grow reliably, we can reduce our dependence on supply ships from Earth. The colony could become self-sufficient for food within 2 years instead of 5. They walked together toward the town center, passing other early risers heading to work. Human colonists mixed with aliens from the Galactic Trade Union. Most of the alien species were friendly enough, interested mainly in the rare minerals that could be mined from the mountains around New Seoul. The largest group of aliens belonged to something called the hegemony. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and bioelectric organs that could produce powerful shocks. The hegemony considered themselves the most advanced civilization in this part of the galaxy. They tolerated human colonies because humans were useful for dangerous mining work, and because Earth had valuable resources to trade. "There is a diplomatic meeting today," Hyun-woo mentioned as they walked. "Captain Soman wants all department heads to attend. Something about new trade agreements with the hegemony." Ji-won made a face. She did not enjoy diplomatic meetings. The alien representatives often acted like humans were children who needed guidance. "Do I have to go?" "I have experiments running that need monitoring. Elder Taehoon specifically requested you attend. He thinks your terraforming work should be part of any long-term agreements with the aliens." Elder Taehoon was the closest thing New Seoul had to a mayor. He was a wise man in his 60s, who had helped establish the colony in its early days. If he wanted Ji-won at the meeting, she would go. They reached the central plaza, a large open area surrounded by the most important buildings in the colony. The administrative offices, the medical center, the main communications hub, and the community meeting hall all faced the plaza. In the center stood a fountain made from local stone, carved by human artists but incorporating design elements from friendly alien cultures. The plaza was already busy with morning activity. Human traders set up stalls selling goods from Earth and locally produced items. Alien visitors moved between the stalls, examining human crafts and technology with curiosity. Children from the colony school ran past, heading to their classes in the education center. Ji-won noticed a group of hegemony aliens near the fountain. They stood apart from the other aliens, their posture and body language suggesting they considered themselves above the common trade activities happening around them. One of them, wearing elaborate robes that marked him as a high-ranking diplomat, watched the human traders with an expression that seemed both bored and disdainful. "That one gives me uncomfortable feelings," Ji-won said quietly. Nodding toward the robed alien, Hyunwoo followed her gaze. That is probably the new hegemony representative Elder Taehoon mentioned. His name is Vextar, I think. He arrived last week with a trade delegation. He looks like he smells something bad. Maybe he does. These hegemony types are used to perfectly controlled environments. Our colony probably seems primitive to him. They continued walking toward Hyunwoo's workplace, a large building that housed the engineering department. The building hummed with the sound of generators, water pumps, and air recycling systems. Hyunwoo's job was to keep all of these systems running smoothly. I will see you at lunch, Hyunwoo said, kissing Jiwon goodbye. Try not to let the aliens annoy you too much at the meeting. I will try, Jiwon replied. But if they start talking about how primitive human agriculture is, I might say something rude. Hyunwoo laughed. Just remember that we need their trade agreements. The colony depends on maintaining good relationships with all the alien species. Jiwon walked back toward her laboratory, passing through the residential district where she and Hyunwoo lived. Their small house had a garden where she grew experimental plants, testing which Earth species might adapt to the local environment. The work was slow and often frustrating, but every success meant progress toward making this world a true home for humanity. As she reached her lab, Jiwon looked back toward the plaza. The hegemony diplomat Vextar was still there, now speaking with other aliens in what looked like an important discussion. Something about his manner bothered her, though she could not say exactly what. There was an arrogance in the way he held himself, as if everyone around him existed only for his convenience. Jiwon shook off the feeling and entered her laboratory. She had work to do, and the diplomatic meeting would come soon enough. For now, she would focus on her plants and the quiet satisfaction of helping humanity take root on a distant world. The afternoon sun was high when Jiwon arrived at the community meeting hall. She had spent the morning in her laboratory, reviewing her research data one final time before the presentation. Her hands were slightly nervous as she carried her data pad and a small bag containing plant samples. The meeting hall was larger than usual gatherings required, but today's audience included representatives from 6 different alien species, along with the human colonists. Elder Taehoon had arranged the seating so that humans and aliens sat together. Hoping to encourage friendly discussion, Jiwon took her place at the presentation podium, while Elder Taehoon introduced her to the mixed audience. She could see Hyunwoo in the 3rd row, giving her an encouraging smile. Captain Somin Lee sat nearby, her security uniform crisp and professional. The human colonists looked interested and supportive. The aliens were harder to read. Most seemed politely attentive, but the hegemony delegation sat with rigid posture that suggested impatience. Vextar, the lead diplomat she had seen that morning, occupied the center seat of their group. His forearms were folded across his chest and his large black eyes showed no emotion. Thank you all for coming, Jiwon began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's sound system. I want to share some exciting progress we have made in terraforming research here at New Seoul. She activated the large display screen behind her, showing photographs of her experimental gardens. The images showed rows of healthy earth plants growing in alien soil under the strange double sunlight of Kepler 442b. For 3 years, we have been trying to adapt Earth food crops to grow in local conditions, she continued. The challenge has been the mineral content of the soil and the different light spectrum from our twin suns. Several aliens leaned forward with interest. The hegemony delegation remained motionless. Last month, I developed a new nutrient blend that solves both problems, Jiwon said, her confidence growing as she warmed to her subject. Plants treated with this blend grow 30% faster than our previous best results. More importantly, they produce higher yields of food. She clicked to the next image showing detailed growth charts and harvest data. The numbers were impressive even to non-specialists. This breakthrough means the New Seoul colony could achieve food independence within 18 months instead of our original 5-year estimate. We could also help other human colonies facing similar challenges. Murmurs of approval came from the human audience. Even some of the aliens nodded with what appeared to be respect. This was clearly important work that could benefit everyone involved in colonial development. Jiwon moved to her final slides. The best part is that this technique uses only locally available materials. We do not need expensive imports from Earth or other worlds. Any human colony can implement these methods. She was about to conclude her presentation when Vextar stood up abruptly. His movement was so sudden that conversation stopped and all attention turned to him. This is unacceptable, the hegemony diplomat announced in a loud voice. His words carried a strange accent that made some sounds harsh and clipped. Terraforming research requires proper oversight from advanced civilizations. Primitive species cannot be allowed to alter planetary environments without guidance. The hall fell completely silent. Jiwan felt her face grow warm with embarrassment and anger. But she tried to maintain her professional composure. With respect, Ambassador Vextar, she said carefully, this research was conducted using standard scientific methods. All of our work follows established protocols for environmental safety. Vextar's forearms spread wide in a gesture that seemed threatening. Standard by whose definition? Human standards are inadequate for work of this importance. You have no authority to make changes that could affect other species living on this world. Elder Tehun stood up from his seat. Ambassador, the Galactic Trade Union agreements specifically allow each species to develop their own colonial territories. The human settlement area was properly allocated through legal channels. Legal channels overseen by the hegemony, Vextar replied coldly. We granted you this territory for basic settlement, not for major terraforming projects. Such work must be approved and supervised by species with proper expertise. Jiwan felt her temper rising. 3 years of careful research and hard work were being dismissed as if they meant nothing. Our research shows clear benefits with no environmental risks. The testing has been thorough and the results are documented. Vextar turned his attention fully to her, his black eyes fixed on her face with obvious contempt. You are a human female working without proper supervision. Your species has been in space for less than 100 years. Do you really believe you understand terraforming better than civilizations that have been shaping worlds for millennia? The insult was so clear and direct that several humans in the audience made angry sounds. Captain Soman started to rise from her seat, but Elder Tehun gestured for her to remain calm. My research speaks for itself, Jiwan said, her voice steady despite her anger. The results are measurable and reproducible. That is how science works, regardless of which species conducts it. Vextar stepped closer to the podium. His full height made him tower over Jiwan, and she could see the bioelectric organs along his neck, beginning to glow with a faint blue light. Science requires wisdom and experience that your kind lacks, he said, his voice dropping to a threatening level. Perhaps you need a lesson in proper respect for your betters. I have shown proper respect for everyone here, Jiwan replied firmly. I am simply presenting factual research results. If you have scientific objections to my methods or conclusions, I am happy to discuss them. That was when Vexitar struck her. The alien's bioelectric appendage lashed out faster than anyone could react. Blue energy crackled from the organ as it made contact with Jiwan's face and left arm. The electrical shock was powerful enough to knock her backward into the wall behind the podium. Pain exploded through Jiwan's body as the bioelectric energy burned her skin. She collapsed to the floor, her left arm numb and her face feeling like it was on fire. The smell of burned flesh filled the air around her. The hall erupted in chaos. Humans jumped to their feet, shouting in anger and alarm. Some of the non-hegemony aliens also appeared shocked by the sudden violence. Captain Soman was moving toward the podium before Jiwan had even finished falling. Vextar stood over Jiwan's fallen form, his bioelectric organs still glowing with residual energy. Let this be a lesson, he announced to the room. Humans must learn their proper place in the galactic order. You are junior species under hegemony protection. Act accordingly. Captain Soman reached Jiwan and knelt beside her, checking her injuries while calling for medical assistance over her communication device. Elder Tehun was demanding an explanation from the other hegemony representatives, but they seemed as surprised as everyone else by their diplomat's actions. I claim diplomatic immunity under Galactic Trade Union protocols, Vextar declared when Captain Soman turned toward him with clear intent to make an arrest. My actions were necessary to correct inappropriate behavior by a subordinate species. The medical team arrived within minutes, carefully lifting Jiwan onto a transport stretcher. She was conscious but clearly in pain, with visible burns across the left side of her face and arm where the bioelectric attack had made contact. As they carried her toward the medical center, Jiwan could hear Vextar still talking to the stunned audience about human arrogance and the need for proper hierarchy. His voice carried no regret or concern for what he had done. The last thing she saw before the medical team carried her outside was the expression on her husband's face as he arrived at the scene. Hyunwoo had been working when the emergency call went out. but he had dropped everything to rush to the meeting hall. The look in his eyes was something Ji-won had never seen before, not even during his military service stories. It was cold and calculating and absolutely furious. Hyun-woo sat beside his wife's hospital bed, watching her sleep fitfully under the influence of pain medication. 3 days had passed since the attack, and the burns on Ji-won's face and arm were healing slowly. The medical team had done good work, but the bioelectric damage went deeper than ordinary burns. Dr. Minho, the colony's chief medical officer, had explained that hegemony bioelectric attacks affected nerve tissue in ways that human medicine still did not fully understand. The physical wounds would heal, but Ji-won might experience pain and weakness in her left arm for months or even years. What worried Hyun-woo more was the change in his wife's personality. Before the attack, Ji-won had been confident and outgoing, always eager to share her research and ideas with others. Now she barely spoke above a whisper and jumped at sudden sounds. She had not looked at herself in a mirror since waking up. The scarring will fade, Dr. Minho had assured them. Bioelectric burns look worse than they are during the first week of healing. But Hyun-woo could see that Ji-won's real injury was not physical. The attack had been public and humiliating, designed to break her spirit as much as harm her body. Vexstar had succeeded in that goal. Captain So-min Lee visited every day, bringing updates on her investigation. Each report made Hyun-woo angrier than the last. The hegemony delegation is backing Vexstar completely, Captain So-min explained during her latest visit. They claim his actions were justified under their cultural laws about maintaining proper hierarchy between species. Hyun-woo looked up from his place beside Ji-won's bed. What about our laws? He committed assault in front of 50 witnesses. Diplomatic immunity, Captain So-min said with obvious frustration. The Galactic Trade Union Treaty gives hegemony diplomats protection from local prosecution. I cannot even file formal charges, so he faces no consequences at all. Worse than that, Elder Tae-hoon received an official complaint from the hegemony delegation. They are demanding that Ji-won apologize publicly for showing disrespect to their representative. Hyun-woo felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. They want her to apologize. To him. Elder Tae-hoon refused, of course, but the hegemony is threatening to withdraw from all trade agreements if we do not discipline our people properly. They could cripple our economy. Ji-won stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of pain. Hyun-woo gently adjusted her blanket and checked that her medication drip was working correctly. Her face still showed angry red marks where the bioelectric energy had burned her. There has to be something we can do, Hyun-woo said quietly. Captain So-min shook her head. I have consulted with every legal expert in the colony. Diplomatic immunity is absolute under the current treaties. Even if we could prove that Vexstar violated hegemony law, we have no authority to prosecute. After Captain So-min left, Hyun-woo sat alone with his thoughts. He had been a military engineer before coming to the colony, trained in both combat and technical problem-solving. Every problem had a solution if you understood the system well enough and were willing to think creatively. The legal system offered no help, but maybe the legal system was not the right approach. That evening, after Ji-won had eaten a small dinner and taken her evening medication, Hyun-woo kissed her forehead and told her he needed to run some errands. She nodded sleepily, still not speaking much since the attack. Instead of going home, Hyun-woo went to the colony's main computer center. As an infrastructure engineer, he had access to technical databases and communication systems that ordinary colonists could not reach. He settled in at a workstation and began researching everything he could find about hegemony culture and biology. The Galactic Trade Union maintained extensive files on all member species. Hyun-woo read through reports on hegemony society, government structure, religious beliefs, and cultural practices. Much of it was familiar from diplomatic briefings, but he was looking for details that most people would consider unimportant. He learned that hegemony society was built around strict hierarchies based on demonstrated competence and honor. Social rank was not inherited but earned through achievement and maintained through adherence to complex codes of conduct. A hegemony individual could lose status by acting dishonorably, even if their actions were technically legal. More importantly, he discovered that the hegemony had ancient traditions for resolving disputes between individuals of different ranks or species. These traditions were rarely used in modern times, but they were still legally recognized under hegemony law. One tradition particularly caught his attention. It was called the Proving, and it dated back thousands of years to when the hegemony was still a collection of warring tribes on their homeworld. The Proving allowed any individual who felt wronged by someone of higher rank to challenge them to single combat to restore honor. Hyunwoo spent hours reading the detailed rules and historical precedents. The challenged party could not refuse without losing tremendous social standing. Combat continued until one participant yielded or was incapacitated. The winner's position on the matter in dispute became legally binding. Most interesting of all, the Proving was specifically designed to allow members of lesser species to challenge their hegemony superiors under certain circumstances. The tradition recognized that honor and competence could exist in any species, not just the hegemony themselves. As dawn approached, Hyunwoo moved to the colony's technical databases and began studying hegemony biology in detail. He learned about their bioelectric organs, their natural armor plating, their sensory capabilities, and their physical weaknesses. His military training helped him analyze the information like intelligence reports on enemy capabilities. Hegemony individuals were stronger than humans and had natural weapons, but they were also larger and less agile. Their bioelectric attacks were powerful, but required time to recharge between uses. Most importantly, they had evolved as ambush predators rather than endurance fighters. A prolonged battle would favor a human opponent. The next morning, Hyunwoo returned to the hospital to find Ji-won awake and trying to eat breakfast with her right hand. Her left arm was still too weak and painful to use effectively. "You were gone a long time," she said without looking at him. "I was researching some things for work," Hyunwoo replied, which was not technically a lie. "Dr. Minho says I can go home tomorrow if the pain stays manageable. That is good news." Ji-won finally looked at him, and Hyunwoo saw tears starting to form in her eyes. "Everyone is talking about what happened. Some people are saying I brought it on myself by being too aggressive with the hegemony delegation. Those people are idiots. Maybe they are right. Maybe I should have been more careful about challenging someone so much more powerful than me." Hyunwoo sat on the edge of her bed and took her good hand in both of his. "Ji-won, listen to me carefully. You did nothing wrong. You presented scientific research in a professional manner. What happened to you was not your fault. But if I had been more respectful, more humble, no." Hyunwoo's voice was firm. "You were respectful. You showed your research and answered questions politely. Vextar attacked you because he is a bully who cannot tolerate being challenged by someone he considers inferior." Ji-won squeezed his hand weakly. "It does not matter now, he won. Everyone saw him defeat me publicly, and there is nothing anyone can do about it." "That is where you are wrong," Hyunwoo said quietly. Something in his tone made Ji-won look at him more closely. "What do you mean?" "I mean that bullies like Vextar think they can act without consequences because they have never faced real opposition. They become confident in their power because no one ever fights back effectively. Hyunwoo, you cannot do anything illegal. The colony needs you and I need you." "I am not planning to do anything illegal," Hyunwoo said, "but I'm also not planning to let this go unpunished." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently, careful not to touch her healing wounds. "Rest now. Focus on getting better. Let me worry about everything else." That afternoon, while Ji-won napped, Hyunwoo made his way to the central plaza. He had spent the morning making certain preparations and reviewing his research one final time. Everything had to be perfect for his plan to work. Vextar was exactly where Hyunwoo expected to find him, holding court near the fountain with other aliens and some human traders who were trying to maintain business relationships despite the recent tension. Hyunwoo approached the group with steady, measured steps. His engineering uniform was clean and pressed, and he carried himself with the confident posture he had learned during his military service. The conversations around Vextar gradually stopped as people noticed Hyunwoo's approach. The hegemony diplomat turned to face him with an expression of mild curiosity. "You are the husband of the disrespectful female," Vextar said in his accented English. "Have you come to apologize for her behavior?" "No," Hyunwoo replied calmly. "I have come to challenge you." The crowd around the fountain fell completely silent when Hyunwoo spoke those words. Even the normal sounds of the busy plaza seemed to fade as people turned to watch what was happening. Vextar's forearms spread wide in what might have been surprise or amusement. His bioelectric organs flickered with a faint blue glow as he looked down at the human standing before him. "Challenge me?" the hegemony diplomat said with obvious mockery. "You are a primitive engineer from a species barely capable of space travel. What could you possibly challenge me about?" Hyunwoo had spent hours the night before practicing what he would say next. The words had to be exactly right, spoken in the formal language patterns that hegemony culture required for legal challenges. "I challenge you, under the ancient law of Kethmoran, to proving that tests honor between beings of different ranks," Hyunwoo said clearly, using the hegemony terms he had memorized. "You have violated the codes of honorable conduct by attacking a researcher caste individual who posed no physical threat to your person or status." Murmurs ran through the crowd as people tried to understand what was happening. Several of the aliens looked shocked that a human knew about hegemony legal traditions. Vextar's amusement vanished quickly. "You dare to quote our ancient laws at me? You understand nothing about honor or proper conduct." "I understand that hegemony honor codes forbid attacking non-combatants during peaceful gatherings," Hyunwoo replied steadily. "I understand that demonstrating competence through research is not an act of disrespect toward other species. And I understand that you attacked my wife because you could not tolerate a human showing knowledge that impressed other aliens." The accusation hung in the air like a physical thing. Around the fountain, both humans and aliens watched the confrontation with growing tension. "Your wife showed arrogance that required correction," Vextar said, but his voice carried less certainty than before. "My wife showed scientific data that threatened your assumption of hegemony superiority in all things," Hyunwoo shot back. "You attacked her not because she was disrespectful, but because she was competent." One of the other hegemony representatives stepped forward, speaking rapidly in their own language. Hyunwoo could not understand the words, but the tone suggested urgency and concern. Vextar replied in the same language, his voice sharp with irritation. The conversation continued for several minutes while the crowd waited nervously. Finally, Vextar turned back to Hyunwoo. "My colleague reminds me that the law of Kethmoran has not been invoked in over 200 years. It is an ancient tradition with no place in modern diplomatic relations." "Ancient, but still legally binding under hegemony law," Hyunwoo replied. "Unless your people no longer honor their own traditions." That touched a nerve. Vextar's bioelectric organs flared brighter, and his posture became more aggressive. "We honor our traditions more than any species in the galaxy. But you are not qualified to invoke Kethmoran. You are not hegemony. The law specifically allows members of client species to challenge hegemony superiors in cases of dishonor," Hyunwoo said, quoting directly from the legal texts he had studied. "That right was established during the Treaty of Three Suns over 1,000 years ago." More urgent conversation in the hegemony language followed. Hyunwoo waited patiently while they discussed what was clearly becoming a serious legal situation. Captain Soman Lee had arrived during the exchange, along with Elder Taehoon and several other colony officials. They stood at the edge of the crowd, watching but not interfering. "The human speaks truth about our laws," another hegemony representative finally said in English. "The right of Kethmoran extends to all species under hegemony protection, if they can demonstrate sufficient cause." Vextar turned on his colleague angrily. "You would side with a primitive against your own kind?" "I side with law and tradition," the other alien replied firmly. "You have been formally challenged under ancient rites. You must respond according to our customs or face loss of honor." The crowd was growing larger as word spread through the colony. Humans and aliens alike gathered to witness what might be the first invocation of an ancient hegemony law in centuries. "Very well," Vextar said finally, his voice cold with rage. "I accept your challenge, human. But understand that Kethmoran is combat until one participant yields or cannot continue. When I defeat you, your wife will still owe me the apology she should have given days ago." "When I defeat you," Hyunwoo replied calmly, "you will make full restitution to my wife and acknowledge your dishonor before all present." "That will never happen. We will see." Elder Taehoon stepped forward from the crowd. "If this is to be a formal challenge under alien law, should we not have proper oversight? This affects the entire colony." The senior hegemony representative nodded gravely. "Kethmoran requires neutral witnesses and adherence to traditional rules. The combat must take place in a designated area with proper ceremony." "When?" Hyunwoo asked. "Tomorrow at midday," Vextar declared. "That gives you time to prepare your funeral arrangements." Tomorrow at midday, Hyunwoo agreed. The formal acceptance sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Several humans looked worried about the obvious mismatch between a human engineer and a trained hegemony diplomat with natural weapons. The rules permit each participant to use weapons and equipment appropriate to their species and training, the senior hegemony representative explained. Combat continues until one yields, is rendered unconscious, or admits defeat. And the winner's position on the original dispute becomes legally binding? Hyunwoo asked. Correct. If you somehow prevail, Ambassador Vextar must make whatever restitution you demand within reason. If he prevails, your wife must make the apology he requires. Understood. Vextar looked at Hyunwoo with undisguised contempt. You have just signed your own death warrant, human. I have trained in combat since childhood. You are a soft engineer who builds water pipes. We will find out tomorrow, Hyunwoo said simply. As the crowd began to disperse, Captain Soman approached Hyunwoo with obvious concern. Do you have any idea what you just committed yourself to? Vextar could kill you easily. Maybe, Hyunwoo replied. But maybe not. This is not a game, Hyunwoo. Hegemony combat training is legendary. Their bioelectric attacks can stop a human heart. I know exactly what I'm doing. Elder Taehoon joined them, his expression serious. The entire colony will be watching tomorrow. If you lose, it could affect our standing with every alien species in the sector. If I lose, my wife will still have to apologize to the alien who attacked her, Hyunwoo said. That is not acceptable. And if you win, then everyone will know that humans do not accept being bullied no matter how powerful the bully thinks he is. That evening, Hyunwoo sat beside Jiwon's hospital bed and told her everything that had happened. She listened in stunned silence as he explained the challenge and the combat scheduled for the next day. You could be killed, she said when he finished. Yes. Is revenge worth dying for? This is not revenge, Hyunwoo replied. This is justice. And it is not just for you. Though you are the most important reason. It is for every human who will face alien bullies in the future. Someone has to show that we will not be intimidated. Jiwon was quiet for a long time, thinking about what he had said. I wish you would not do this, she said finally. I know, but I have to. Then you had better win. I plan to. Hyunwoo spent that night in his workshop making final preparations for the next day's combat. By morning, he would be ready to face an alien warrior with centuries of tradition behind him. The question was whether human engineering and determination would be enough to overcome superior strength and natural weapons. Tomorrow would provide the answer. The entire colony gathered in the central plaza by midday. Word had spread beyond New Seoul to other settlements. And even some alien traders from distant worlds had arrived to witness the rare invocation of Kethmoran. A circular area 50 meters across had been marked out in the plaza's center, with barriers to keep spectators at a safe distance. The senior hegemony representative served as the official judge, flanked by witnesses from several alien species and Elder Taehoon, representing the human colonists. Jiwon sat in a special chair near the front, despite Dr. Minho's protests about her leaving the hospital. Her left arm was still in a medical brace and healing burns marked her face, but she had insisted on watching. Captain Soman stood beside her, ready to provide assistance if needed. Vextar entered the combat circle first, wearing traditional hegemony battle gear that looked like ceremonial armor, made from some kind of biometallic material. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he performed ritual warming exercises. Blue energy flickered along his bioelectric organs as he prepared for combat. The alien was an impressive sight. Nearly 7 feet tall with natural armor plating along his chest and arms, he moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a physical confrontation. His bioelectric organs glowed steadily, fully charged and ready to discharge powerful shocks. The challenger may now enter, the judge announced. Hyunwoo walked into the circle wearing what looked like a modified version of his engineering worksuit. The crowd murmured in confusion as they tried to understand what they were seeing. His normal work clothes had been reinforced with metal plating from construction equipment. Power cables ran along his arms and legs connected to a backpack unit that hummed with electrical energy. His boots were the heavy magnetic clamps used for working on spacecraft hulls. Most unusual of all, he carried what appeared to be a modified industrial cutting tool in his right hand. What is that human wearing? Someone in the crowd asked loudly. Construction equipment, another voice answered. He turned his work gear into armor. Vextar looked at Hyunwoo's improvised equipment with obvious disdain. You face me wearing mining tools? Do you mock the traditions of Kethmaran? I face you wearing the tools of my trade, Hyunwoo replied calmly. Just as you wear the equipment appropriate to yours. The judge raised his voice to address both combatants. The ancient law permits each participant to use weapons and protection suitable to their species and training. Combat begins when I give the signal and continues until one participant yields or is unable to continue. Hyunwoo activated his equipment with a series of switches on his belt. The backpack unit's humming grew louder, and lights began blinking along the power cables. His boots locked to the ground with magnetic clicks. Any final words before we begin? Vextar asked mockingly. Yes, Hyunwoo said. You made a mistake when you hurt my wife. The judge stepped back to the edge of the circle. Let Kethmaran begin. Vextar immediately launched himself forward with surprising speed for such a large being. His forearms spread wide to grab Hyunwoo while bioelectric energy built up for a devastating attack. Hyunwoo did not try to dodge. Instead, he braced himself with his magnetic boots and raised his modified cutting tool. As Vextar closed the distance, Hyunwoo triggered the tool's plasma discharge. A bright blue beam of superheated energy shot out, striking Vextar in the chest. The alien's natural armor absorbed most of the damage, but the unexpected attack forced him to stumble backward. Human technology, Vextar snarled. You hide behind machines because you lack natural strength. I use the tools available to me, Hyunwoo replied, adjusting settings on his equipment. Just as you use your bioelectric organs. Vextar circled around the combat area looking for an opening. His bioelectric organs were fully charged now, crackling with dangerous energy. He feinted left, then lunged right, trying to get past Hyunwoo's plasma cutter. This time his attack succeeded. Vextar's forearms grabbed Hyunwoo around the torso, and bioelectric energy discharged directly into the human's improvised armor. The crowd gasped as electricity coursed over Hyunwoo's body. But instead of collapsing, he remained standing. The power cables along his arms and legs glowed bright blue as they absorbed and redirected the electrical attack. Impossible, Vextar said, his bioelectric organs flickering weakly after the massive discharge. Basic electrical engineering, Hyunwoo replied. He triggered his plasma cutter again, this time at point-blank range. The beam struck Vextar's shoulder, burning through his armor and into the flesh beneath. The alien roared in pain and anger, releasing his grip on Hyunwoo and staggering backward. Your bioelectric attacks are powerful, Hyunwoo said, advancing steadily on his magnetic boots. But they are still just electricity, and I know how to handle electricity. Vextar's bioelectric organs were still recharging from his massive discharge. He would need several minutes before he could generate another full-power attack. In the meantime, he had to rely on his physical strength and natural weapons. The alien charged again, this time keeping his bioelectric organs in reserve. His forearms moved in complex patterns, trying to overwhelm Hyunwoo with multiple attacks from different angles. Hyunwoo's response was methodical and precise. He used his plasma cutter to keep Vextar at a distance while maneuvering with his magnetic boots. When the alien managed to close range, Hyunwoo activated defensive systems that sent feedback electrical charges through his armor. The combat continued for nearly 20 minutes. Vextar was stronger and faster, but Hyunwoo's equipment gave him advantages the alien had not expected. More importantly, the hegemony warrior was tiring quickly. His species had evolved as ambush predators, not endurance fighters. You cannot keep this up forever, human, Vextar panted, his bioelectric organs glowing weakly. Eventually, your primitive machines will fail. Maybe, Hyunwoo said, barely breathing hard thanks to his armor's life support systems. But your bioelectric system is already failing. How many more full discharges can you manage? To demonstrate his point, Hyunwoo triggered a sustained plasma beam that forced Vextar to dodge continuously around the combat circle. The alien's movements were becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. This is taking too long, Vextar declared. He stopped dodging and began building up bioelectric energy for one final massive attack. Blue light coursed along his entire body as he prepared to discharge everything at once. You want to bet everything on one attack? Hyunwoo asked. That seems unwise. I will end this now, Vextar replied, his voice strained with the effort of containing so much electrical energy. The alien unleashed everything he had in a single devastating blast. Lightning-like energy arced across the combat circle, striking Hyunwoo with enough power to kill a dozen humans. But Hyunwoo had spent all night preparing for exactly this moment. His improvised armor did not just absorb the electrical attack, it stored the energy in capacitor banks built into his backpack unit. As Vextar's bioelectric organs went completely dark, exhausted by the massive discharge, Hyunwoo calmly aimed his plasma cutter and triggered his own final attack. The weapon discharged with 10 times its normal power, boosted by the energy Vextar had just provided. The supercharged plasma beam struck the alien center mass, burning completely through his natural armor and sending him crashing to the ground. Vextar lay motionless for several seconds before weakly raising one arm. "I yield," he whispered, barely audible to the crowd. The judge stepped forward and examined both combatants. Vextar was conscious but clearly unable to continue fighting. Hyunwoo stood upright, his equipment still humming with residual power. "The human is victorious," the judge announced to the stunned crowd. "Kethmoran is complete." Silence lasted for nearly a minute as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. Then the human colonists erupted in cheers while many of the aliens looked on in shock. Hyunwoo deactivated his equipment and walked over to where Vextar lay. The alien's bioelectric organs were completely dark, and his natural armor showed multiple burn marks from the plasma attacks. "You fought well," Hyunwoo said quietly, "but you lost the moment you decided to hurt someone who could not defend herself." Vextar looked up at him with a mixture of pain and something that might have been respect. "How did you know your equipment would work against bioelectric attacks?" "Because I spent 3 days studying your biology and testing electrical absorption systems," Hyunwoo replied. "I am an engineer. Solving problems is what I do." The judge approached them both. "According to the law of Kethmoran, the victor may demand restitution from the defeated. What do you require, human?" Hyunwoo looked across the plaza to where Ji-won sat watching with tears in her eyes. "I require Ambassador Vexitar to publicly acknowledge that my wife's actions were not disrespectful, that her research represents valuable scientific work, and that his attack on her violated hegemony codes of honor. And I require him to make formal apology to my wife for the injuries he caused and the humiliation he inflicted." The judge turned to Vextar. "Do you accept these terms?" Vextar struggled to sit up, his movements slow and painful. "I accept." As the crowd watched, the defeated hegemony diplomat made his way across the plaza to where Ji-won sat. In front of hundreds of witnesses from multiple species, he knelt before her and spoke the formal words of apology required by his own culture's traditions. It was a moment that would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the day a human engineer proved that no species, no matter how advanced, could ignore the consequences of their actions. The age of human intimidation was over. 3 weeks after the combat, life in New Seoul had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The story of Hyunwoo's victory over Vextar had spread through communication networks across dozens of worlds, carried by traders, diplomats, and curious observers who had witnessed the historic event. Ji-won stood in her laboratory, her left arm still weak but functional enough for her to continue her work. The burns on her face had healed to faint scars that Dr. Minho promised would fade completely within a few months. More importantly, her confidence had returned stronger than before. "The latest soil samples show even better results," she told Hyunwoo as he joined her for lunch. "The nutrient blend is working in 3 different climate zones now. We could have full agricultural independence within the year." "That is excellent news," Hyunwoo replied, admiring the healthy plants growing in neat rows throughout the laboratory. "Have you heard back from the other colonies about implementing your methods?" 5 colonies have requested detailed reports and 2 have already started their own testing programs. The Centauri settlement wants me to visit personally to help set up their agricultural systems. Hyunwoo smiled at his wife's enthusiasm. The attack had not broken her spirit. It had simply made her more determined to prove the value of her work. They ate their lunch while watching through the laboratory windows, as construction crews worked on expanding the colony's agricultural sector. The expansion had been approved unanimously by the Colonial Council after Ji-won's research gained galaxy-wide recognition. "Captain Soman stopped by this morning," Ji-won mentioned. "She said you have been getting interesting visitors." "A few," Hyunwoo admitted. "Representatives from human colonies that want to learn about defensive engineering. Some questions about adapting industrial equipment for security purposes." "And the alien visitors?" Hyunwoo's expression became more serious. Those are more complicated. Several species want to establish formal diplomatic relations, now that they know humans cannot be easily intimidated. The Altarian Trade Federation offered us a very favorable mining contract yesterday. That sounds positive. It is, but it also means we need to be careful about maintaining the respect we have earned. Other species are watching to see if Vextar's defeat was a fluke or represents actual human capabilities. The changes in alien attitudes had been dramatic and immediate. Where before many species had treated humans as junior partners to be tolerated, now they approached human colonies with genuine respect. Trade negotiations that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward. Diplomatic insults that had been common became rare. Elder Tehun had called it the most significant shift in human-alien relations since first contact. Speaking of Vextar, Ji-won said carefully, have you heard anything about his situation? Hyunwoo nodded. Captain Soman gets regular updates through diplomatic channels. He was recalled to the hegemony homeworld immediately after the combat. His diplomatic career is over. Do you feel bad about that? No. He attacked my wife in front of witnesses because he thought there would be no consequences. He was wrong. The hegemony delegation had departed New Seoul the day after the combat, taking their defeated representative with them. But before leaving, the senior diplomat had approached Elder Taehoon with an unexpected offer. They want to establish a permanent hegemony research station here, Hyunwoo continued. Apparently some of their scientists are very interested in human engineering techniques. They specifically mentioned adaptive technology and defensive systems. Are we going to allow it? The Colonial Council voted to approve it with conditions. The hegemony researchers will work under human supervision and must share all their findings with our scientists. It was a complete reversal of the relationship dynamics that had existed before the combat. Instead of humans working under alien oversight, one of the galaxy's most advanced species was requesting permission to study human methods. After lunch, they walked together through the central plaza where the combat had taken place. A small memorial plaque had been installed near the fountain, commemorating the first invocation of Kethmaran in over 2 centuries. Tourists from various worlds often stopped to read it and take pictures. Hyunwoo, Ji-won said as they approached their house, I never properly thanked you for what you did. You do not need to thank me. You are my wife. Protecting you is not something that requires thanks. But you risked everything. You could have been killed. Hyunwoo stopped walking and turned to face her. Ji-won, if I had done nothing, you would have spent the rest of your life believing that humans have to accept being bullied by stronger species. That attack was not just against you, it was against the idea that humans deserve respect. And now everyone knows that humans will not accept being treated as inferiors, no matter how advanced our opponents think they are. That evening, they attended a community meeting in the same hall where Ji-won had been attacked weeks earlier. The meeting had been called to discuss the colony's response to numerous requests for partnerships, trade agreements, and research collaborations that had arrived since the combat. Elder Tehun addressed the packed audience, which included both human colonists and representatives from several alien species. We face an unprecedented opportunity to establish New Seoul as a major diplomatic and research center. The question is whether we are prepared for such rapid growth. Captain Soman presented security considerations. Our current population is 15,000 humans and about 400 aliens. If we accept all the proposed partnerships, those numbers could double within 2 years. We need to expand our security forces and infrastructure significantly. Several colonists asked questions about maintaining their community's character while accommodating so much growth. Others worried about becoming too dependent on alien partnerships. Ji-won raised her hand when the discussion turned to research collaborations. I think we should be selective about which partnerships we accept. We want allies who respect human autonomy, not species who see us as useful subordinates. How do we tell the difference? Someone asked. By how they approach the negotiations, Hyunwoo answered. Species that treat us as equals offer mutual benefit arrangements. Species that still see us as inferiors offer deals where they control the terms. Elder Taehoon nodded approvingly. That is wise advice. We have earned respect through strength and competence. We must maintain both if we want that respect to continue. The meeting continued for 2 more hours, covering details about agricultural expansion, infrastructure development, and diplomatic protocols. By the end, The colonists had voted to pursue carefully selected partnerships while maintaining strict standards for how they would be treated. As they walked home under the light of Kepler 442b's twin moons, Jiwan reflected on how much their lives had changed. A month ago, I was just a botanist trying to grow better crops. Now apparently I am part of an important diplomatic shift. You were always important, Hyunwoo replied. The rest of the galaxy just needed to be reminded that human achievements deserve recognition. And you went from being an infrastructure engineer to someone that alien warriors study for tactical lessons. I am still an infrastructure engineer. I just proved that human engineering can solve any problem, including military ones. They reached their house where Jiwan's experimental garden showed the results of her latest research. Under the alien starlight, Earth plants grew strong and healthy in soil that had been barren when humans first arrived. Do you think this will last? Jiwan asked. The respect, the partnerships, the new status? As long as we continue to prove ourselves worthy of it, Hyunwoo said. Respect is not something you earn once and keep forever. You have to maintain it through continued competence and strength. Then we had better make sure we stay competent and strong. Agreed. As they prepared for bed, news reports from across the galaxy confirmed what they had already suspected. The combat between Hyunwoo and Vextar had become a symbol throughout human space. Other colonies were investing in defensive technologies and assertiveness training for their diplomats. Human research projects were receiving increased funding and attention. Most importantly, reports of aliens bullying or intimidating humans had dropped dramatically across all colonized worlds. Word had spread that humans would not tolerate such treatment and had the capability to enforce their demands for respect. The age of human subjugation in galactic affairs was truly over. 3 months later, Jiwan received an invitation to present her agricultural research at the Galactic Science Symposium, the most prestigious scientific gathering in known space. Her work would be featured alongside discoveries from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The invitation letter specifically mentioned that her research represented innovative approaches from an emerging species that merits serious attention from the established scientific community. As she showed the invitation to Hyunwoo, Jiwon smiled at the respectful language. No one would ever again dismiss human work as primitive or unworthy of consideration. Are you nervous about presenting to such an advanced audience? Hyunwoo asked. Not anymore, Jiwon replied confidently. I have good research, solid data, and practical results. If anyone has a problem with that, they can discuss it with my husband. Hyunwoo laughed. I do not think that will be necessary, but I will bring my equipment just in case. Outside their window, the lights of New Seoul sparkled in the alien night. The small frontier colony had become something much more important. A symbol of human determination, and a proof that respect in the galaxy had to be earned, but once earned, would be maintained. The story of Vextar's defeat would be told for generations, reminding everyone that no species, no matter how advanced, could ignore the consequences of underestimating human resolve. 1 year after the combat that changed everything, Jiwan stood at the podium of the Grand Assembly Hall on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Before her sat representatives from 47 different species, the most diverse scientific gathering in galactic history. The Galactic Science Symposium had never before featured a human as a keynote speaker. Honored colleagues, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber's translation systems. I want to share with you the results of terraforming research that proves innovation can come from any species, regardless of how recently they joined the galactic community. The audience listened with respectful attention as Jiwan presented her agricultural breakthroughs. Her data showed dramatic improvements in crop yields across 12 different world types, with techniques now being used by colonies from 8 different species. In the front row, Hyunwoo watched with quiet pride. He wore a simple business suit rather than his engineering uniform, but several alien representatives had still approached him before the presentation to discuss defensive technologies and adaptive engineering techniques. The key insight, Jiwan continued, was recognizing that each world's unique properties could be assets rather than obstacles. Instead of forcing Earth plants to survive in alien conditions, we modified the growing environment to enhance what made each world special. Her presentation included case studies from human colonies and allied settlements that had implemented her methods. Food production had increased by an average of 60% across all participating worlds. More importantly, the techniques required only locally available materials, making them accessible to any colony regardless of their trade relationships. When she finished, the applause was immediate and genuine. Several alien scientists rose from their seats to show additional respect, including representatives from species that had previously dismissed human capabilities. During the question period that followed, a tall alien with crystalline features and multiple sensory organs raised a manipulator appendage. Dr. Kim, your methods have been tested successfully on worlds with very different environmental conditions. Do you believe these techniques represent a fundamental advance in terraforming science? I believe they represent a different approach to terraforming, Jiwan replied carefully. Rather than imposing solutions for more advanced civilizations, we focused on understanding and working with each world's natural systems. Sometimes the newest perspective can see possibilities that established methods might overlook. Another alien, this one resembling a large insectoid with iridescent wings, asked the question many in the audience were thinking. Your research has achieved remarkable results in a relatively short time. Some observers have suggested that human scientific methods differ significantly from those used by older civilizations. Would you comment on this? Jiwan glanced at Hyunwoo, who gave her an encouraging nod. Human science emphasizes practical problem-solving and adaptability. We test ideas quickly, fail fast when something does not work, and build on successes without worrying about whether our methods match traditional approaches. We focus on results rather than maintaining established procedures. And this approach has proven effective across multiple disciplines, added Dr. Seokjun, a human physicist who had been invited to co-present research on faster-than-light communication improvements. The questions continued for another hour, covering everything from specific technical details to broader implications for galactic research cooperation. Throughout the session, the alien scientists treated the human presenters as respected colleagues rather than curiosities from a primitive world. After the formal presentation ended, Jiwon and Hyunwoo attended a reception where they met privately with representatives from various species interested in research partnerships. The conversations were very different from the diplomatic meetings of a year ago. The Altarian Federation would like to establish a joint research station, explained Ambassador Zethkol, a humanoid alien with silver skin and large eyes. Your agricultural techniques could help us develop marginal worlds that we previously considered unsuitable for settlement. We would be interested in discussing such a partnership, Jiwon replied.
What would the terms involve?
Equal partnership with shared leadership and combined research teams. All discoveries would be jointly owned and freely shared between our species. Hyunwoo noted the difference in language. Equal partnership, shared leadership, joint ownership. A year ago, the offer would have involved human researchers working under alien supervision with limited access to their own discoveries. That sounds very reasonable, Jiwon said. We would want to include expansion rights for other human colonies that might benefit from the research. Of course. We have great respect for human ingenuity and would welcome broader cooperation. Similar conversations happened throughout the evening with representatives from the Crystalline Confederacy, the Oceanic Alliance, and even a delegation from the hegemony itself. The hegemony representatives were notably respectful and focused their discussions on learning from human defensive engineering techniques. It is remarkable how much has changed, observed Elder Kojin, the Valdorian philosopher who served as the symposium's host. 1 year ago, few species considered humans capable of significant scientific contributions. Now your research methods are being studied and copied throughout the galaxy. Respect has to be earned, Hyunwoo replied. We proved that humans will not accept being dismissed or bullied. Once that was established, our actual capabilities could be evaluated fairly. And what capabilities they have proven to be, Elder Kojin said. Human colonies now lead galactic research in adaptive technologies, practical engineering, and innovative agriculture. Your species has become a model for how younger civilizations can contribute to galactic progress. Later that evening, in their guest quarters overlooking the symposium complex, Jiwon and Hyunwoo reflected on how much their lives had changed since that terrible day when Vextar had attacked her. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had not challenged him? Jiwon asked. Yes, Hyunwoo said honestly. You would have spent your life believing that humans have to accept whatever treatment more advanced species choose to give us. Other humans would have learned the same lesson. We would still be a client species dependent on alien approval for everything we do. Instead, we are research partners and equals. More than equals in some areas. Human engineering and agriculture are now considered among the best in the galaxy. That happened because we refused to accept limitations that others tried to impose on us. Through their window, they could see the lights of the symposium complex where representatives from dozens of species worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. Human researchers moved among them as respected colleagues, their ideas valued and their methods studied. Captain Soman sent a message today, G1 mentioned. 3 more human colonies have requested defensive engineering consultations. Apparently, word has spread that human defensive systems are extremely effective. Any actual conflicts? 2 situations where alien bullying stopped immediately when the aggressors learned they were dealing with humans. No combat was necessary. Hyunwoo smiled at that news. The best victory was the one that did not require fighting. His defeat of Vextar had established a reputation that prevented other conflicts rather than causing them. There is something else, G1 continued. The Galactic Research Council has invited human colonies to establish a permanent research station at Nexus Prime. They want us to coordinate adaptive technology development for the entire galactic community. That is a significant honor and a significant responsibility. We would essentially become the Galactic Center for Practical Engineering and Innovative Agriculture. They spent the rest of the evening discussing the implications of such an opportunity. Leading galactic research efforts would establish humans as one of the major scientific powers in known space. It would also create expectations for continued innovation and leadership. Can we handle that level of responsibility? Ji-won wondered. We handled everything else that has been thrown at us, Hyunwoo replied. Human adaptability and determination got us this far. The same qualities will carry us forward. The next morning brought news that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. The Hegemony High Council had formally announced new protocols for interspecies relations, specifically citing the need to treat all species with appropriate respect regardless of their technological development level. The announcement mentioned the lessons learned from recent diplomatic incidents, and emphasized that all hegemony representatives would receive training in cultural sensitivity and conflict resolution. The days of alien diplomats casually bullying human colonists were officially over. They are essentially admitting that their previous behavior was wrong, Dr. Seokjin observed as they read the announcement together. They are admitting that their previous behavior carries consequences they cannot afford, Hyunwoo corrected. Respect based on fear is not ideal, but it is better than no respect at all. As their time at the symposium ended, Ji-won and Hyunwoo prepared to return to New Seoul with agreements for 6 major research partnerships and preliminary approval for the Galactic Research Station. Their small frontier colony was about to become one of the most important scientific centers in known space. Are you ready for our lives to change again? Ji-won asked as they boarded the transport ship. As long as we change them together, Hyunwoo replied. Behind them, Nexus Prime's towers gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, filled with researchers from across the galaxy working on projects that would benefit everyone. Humans now stood among them as equals, their voices heard and their contributions valued. The message was clear throughout galactic civilization. Humanity had arrived not as junior partners seeking approval, but as a species capable of leading and innovating. The small human engineer who had defeated a hegemony warrior in single combat had changed more than the outcome of one fight. He had changed humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Years later, when historians wrote about the transformation of interspecies relations, they would point to that moment in New Seoul's Central Plaza as the turning point. The day when a husband's love for his wife became a declaration that no species, regardless of their power or technology, could treat humans as inferiors without facing the consequences. The galaxy was a better place because one human refused to let injustice go unanswered. And in the end, that was the most human response of all.